Welcome back. Today we are starting our next unit, which is Unit 7, Solving Quadratics. Now remember, a quadratic is when you have x raised to the second power. All right, so let's take a look at today. Today, our goal, given a quadratic equation, which is y equals ax squared plus bx plus c, you will be able to solve for the values of x. All right, ladies and gentlemen, what I'd like to do here is just give you a little bit of a review. So this entire school year, we have been working with linear equations. So x plus 4 equals 14. So how would you solve this? Well, we would just transpose the 4, and we would get x to be equal to 10. That would be our solution. Now, in linear equations, x is always raised to the first power. And when x is raised to the first power, you get a single answer. Now, if we come over here, when we look at this, this is a quadratic. X is being raised to the second power. Since it's being raised to the second power, there are going to be two solutions. And those solutions, we are also going to call them the roots or the zeros of the equation. All right, so today we are going to learn exactly how to find those two solutions. All right, so let's take a look. This is how we're going to do it, solving quadratics. All right, so here are your steps. Step number 1, you always set the equation equal to 0 whenever you have a quadratic. You're going to put the equation in standard form. That means you're going to put your x squared first, then your x, your constant equals 0. Then we're going to factor. We've spent the last 6 weeks factoring. This is why, because we're going to use it here. So let's remember the order for factoring. The first type of factoring you always try, number 1, you should always try GCF. Number 2, you should always try is difference of perfect squares. Then trinomial, and if trinomial doesn't work, then you're going to try grouping. Okay, so that's step 3. After you factor, we're going to do something called tee it up. And then you're going to set each factor equal to 0, and you're going to solve each. So your answers are called the solutions, the roots, or the zeros. So they're called the zeros because we set the whole thing equal to 0. All right, so let's go ahead and let's try this out. So number 1, y is being squared. Since y is squared, that means there's going to be 2 solutions. Now, if there's 2 solutions, we have to make sure we set this equal to 0. So I have to transpose the 11y to the other side. And we always want our y squared to be positive. So I want to keep that to be positive. So y squared plus 11y plus 24 is equal to 0. So we have it in standard form, y squared, y, the constant, equals 0. Okay, so now we have to factor. So first type of factoring, is there a GCF? Nope. Can I use dots? Nope. Let's see, can we use trinomial? So 2 sets of parentheses equal to 0. Now y squared is my first term, so that breaks down to y and y. So now can you think of 2 numbers that will multiply to 24 and add to 11? I think it's going to be 8 and 3. So we're going to go plus 8 and plus 3. Okay, so that's step number 3, factor. Step 4, we're going to tee it up and we're going to set each factor equal to 0. So tee it up, all you're going to do is you're going to draw a big T. Okay, now we're going to set each of these equal to 0 because since they're multiplying, it doesn't matter if one of these is 0. 0 times anything is going to give you 0. So this becomes y plus 8 equals 0 and y minus 3 equals 0. Oops, y plus 3, sorry. And then we're going to solve each side. So here to solve for y, we have to subtract the 8, and we get y equals negative 8. So there's your first solution. Over here, we subtract 3, and we get y equals negative 3, and that is our second answer. So we have our 2 solutions. You can leave them just like that, or if you want to put them in set notation, the solution is the set of numbers negative 8 -3. Okay, let's take a look at number 2. So number 2, again, m is squared. If m is squared, that means there's going to be 2. This time I'm going to call them the roots. There's going to be 2 roots. So if there's 2 answers, you have to set the whole thing equal to 0. So let's go ahead. We're going to bring the 64 over. So m squared is equal, minus 64 is equal to 0. Okay, now we have to factor. So remember your rules for factoring. First is GCF, no GCF. Second is DOPS. So we're going to go ahead and use difference of perfect squares. So one gets a plus, one gets a minus. M, and the square root of 64 is 8 and 8. Then we're going to T it up. So we get m plus 8 equals 0, m minus 8 equals 0. And then you can solve both sides. So here we're going to subtract 8, and we get m is equal to -8. And over here we're going to add 8. We're going to transpose the 8 to the other side, and we get m is equal to +8. And these are your 2 solutions. Now, I know a lot of you were probably up here saying, hey, can we just take the square root of 64? Well, you can, but you have to remember that the square root of 64 is a positive or a -8. Because if I were to do 8 squared in the calculator, we get 64. But if I do -8 squared, we also get 64. So that's why it's positive and -8. Okay, let's take a look now at number 3. This one's a little bit different. We're going to put a little bit of a star there. Okay, if I take a look here, look at your highest power x right here. It is to the 3rd power. So if x to the first is 1 answer, x to the second is 2 answers, that means x to the 3rd, there are going to be 3 solutions here. Okay, so in order to find your 3 solutions, we have to factor. So first type of factoring, GCF. Do all 3 of these have something in common? Yes, they do. They have a 3x. So I'm going to divide 3x out of all of these because we're putting it on the outside. And we're going to get x squared minus 2x minus 8x, minus 8 equals 0. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead now and we're going to solve. Okay, so now we have to factor the inside again because x is still being squared. So the 3x is going to stay there, and now we're going to use trinomial factoring. Equals 0. So if I factor this again, it's x. Now I need to find 2 numbers that multiply to -8, add to -2. So that would be -4 and +2. Okay, now we're going to have to tee it up, but we're actually going to have to do a double T here because we have an x, and an x. These are your 3 answers, so they all get their separate spaces. So here we're going to set 3x equal to 0. Here we're going to set x minus 4 is equal to 0. And here we're going to set x plus 2 is equal to 0. And now we're going to solve for each of those. So here I'm going to divide by 3 to transpose to the other side. So x is equal to, now 0 divided by 3 is just 0. So there's our first answer. In the middle column, we're going to add 4 to both sides. So we get x is equal to 4. And then finally, in our last column, we're going to transpose by subtracting the 2. So we get x is equal to -2. And ladies and gentlemen, you've just solved your cubic function because there's 3 answers because x was raised to the 3rd power. Okay, let's go ahead and try number 4. Now number 4, we're going to have to simplify here because we have an x plus 2 squared. So I remember that when we square parentheses, we have to write it out twice. And then we have to use our long distribution. So x times x is x squared. X times 2, 2 times x, and 2 times 2. We combine those middle terms, 4x plus 4, and there we go. So now I'm going to replace that in my equation with my trinomial. Plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 100. Okay, so now x is being squared. It's to the 2nd power. All right, I'm still going to have to simplify this a little more, but that also means that there's going to be two solutions. So there's going to be two zeros here, which means I have to set this equal to 0. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to combine my like terms here, and we're going to get 2x squared plus 4x plus 4 is equal to 100. But we have to set this equal to 0. So now I'm going to transpose the 100 over. And we're going to get 2x squared plus 4x minus 96 is equal to 0. All right, that 96 is it's a little bit of a larger number, but remember, always try GCF first. So 2, 4, negative 96. Is there a GCF? Yes, there is. It is 2. X squared plus 2x, and then 96 divided by 2, we're going to get 48. Okay, so now we have to use trinomial inside of the parentheses here. So x and x, can we think of two numbers that multiply to negative 48 and add to positive 2? All right, I'm coming up with 8 and negative 6. Okay, now we're going to tee it up. Now I only need one t here because does this 2 have an x with it? Nope. So we don't have to do anything there because there is no x to use to solve. There's only two answers here because x was squared. So x plus 8 equals 0 and x minus 6 equals 0. And then we're going to solve both sides. So we subtract 8, transpose the 8. So x is equal to negative 8. There's your first solution. And then over here we're going to transpose by adding the 6. And we get x is equal to 6. So our two zeros are negative 8 and 6. All right, let's go ahead then. We're going to flip it over to the back. All right, we got just a couple questions left, so let's try number 5. So for this one, we see we have d's to the second power, so that means there's going to be two answers. So we have to set this equal to 0. So I'm going to minus 2d to the other side. So we're going to end up with d squared minus 2d is equal to 0. And we're going to solve using GCF. So d minus 2 equals 0. And then we can tee it up. So we get d equals 0. That's your first part. And your second part is d minus 2 equals 0. And then you transpose the 2. And d is equal to 2. So your two solutions here are 0 and 2. All right, ladies and gentlemen, questions 6 and 7, we're going to try questions just like that in class, but just as a heads up, number 6, you would just cross multiply and then solve. All right, what you're going to do next, if you take a look at the next page in your notes, you are going to practice a few of these. So use day 1 notes as your reference. This is going to be collected at the beginning of class, so make sure you solve each. If you have any questions, you should come see me before school tomorrow. All right, have a great night and give it your best try.